All right, we're going to look at Exodus chapter 4 tonight, as we've been working on this book a little bit here. Exodus chapter 4 is where we are. A lot of good stuff in this book. It's why we picked it as a course of study. A lot of things that relate to, our struggle to obey God, as Tom was talking about. A lot of things that we can glean from it. That we can apply to our own lives. Tons of practical stuff here as we look at some of these great, characters of Scripture like Moses. He's a guy here that, we see, the Lord has a hand on him. He has a miraculous birth story, sort of like the Lord Jesus, not exactly the same. He has, quite an upbringing. In Pharaoh's court, lots of advantages, being trained there. He has, an incredible, moment of failure in his life when he's guilty of murder. He then, leaves and, spends, another 40 years, out, doing his thing as God is sort of preparing him, for, what he's going to, call him to do. And then we have, the appearance, of the Lord to him, at the burning bush. And so this is, sort of a little bit of our, our review as we go into our passage, here tonight. Just to keep in mind, where we've been in the book so far, what's been happening, where we're located. And so up to this point, in the story, as God's been, telling Moses what his new purpose was, that, hey, I'm going to use you to go and to deliver, my people, Israel, out of slavery. Remember that God had promised to make them a mighty nation. Under the promises to Abraham, and it was really through this time, in slavery for all those years, 400 some years, that God is increasing the nation. He's causing them to be very numerous and very threatening to the Egyptians, and so God is going to use Moses to take these people out, of their power. With this task, being given to him at the burning bush, Moses, I'm going to use you. I want you to, to do this. And, the Lord is very clear with Moses, I'm going to be with you. And, I'm not asking you to do this alone. I'm going to walk with you. Each step of the way through this. And, we're going to accomplish this, right? I'm using you as my human agent, but the power, and the plans and all that is for me. And as we looked at chapter 3, we see that we got some objections that are coming up that Moses is going to start giving, and at first they start very innocently, and they seem like a lot of humility. Like his first one in chapter 3 is, well, I don't think I can do this. Did God ever call you to do something and you said, hey, I don't think I can do this? There's a lot of things like that happen in life, and a lot of times the Lord puts something on your heart, or He calls you to do something, and the first thing that you feel is an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. Well, that's sort of what we had, for Moses as we, as we see him, right here in this story. I don't think I can do this, Lord. And then, his next objection, is like the first one. So now we're on to number 2. Lord, I don't think anyone else thinks that I can do this, right? And by that he's talking about the leadership, of the Israelites, all of the people that have been, serving as the leaders of the people there in Egypt. He said, I don't know that they're going to accept me. And to that, the Lord says, well, listen, tell them this. Tell them, who sent you. Tell them that I am sent you. And there's a lot of irony in that, right? Because Moses is saying, I don't think I am enough, and the Lord is saying, well, I am enough. Don't worry about who you are, worry about who I am. I'm the God of action. I exist, I do things in the world. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to use you. So, Moses, I'm going to be with you, put on your big boy pants, and let's go. So we're already two sort of, times here when Moses is saying to God, hey, I don't know about this, okay? And God is very patient with him. And he's answering, his objections, and he's dealing with his sense of inadequacy and his focus on self and all of this. But as the passage wears on, it gets to become a little bit much as you read it. So then we come to chapter 4, and we have our next objection in the opening verse. And Moses answered, "What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'?" So now we're on to number 3. So, when the Lord asks you to do something, I understand that, that we have sometimes when we doubt, ourselves, or we doubt if anyone's going to be, accomplishing anything, or if the Lord, can use us, or if anyone will listen to us, or whatever. But when the Lord's telling you to do something, it's like, there's a point in time when you just got to be like, okay, I'm just going to listen. And so now we're on to objection 3, right? As we go through the story. And again, the Lord does not rebuke him. Once again, the Lord is patient, with him. And what he's going to do is he's going to basically, he's going to give him 3 miracles. Now, the reason, for that is that, eventually when he gives Moses the law, he's going to tell him this, that a thing is established on the testimony of how many witnesses? 2 or 3 witnesses, the Bible tells you, right? And so what he's going to do is he's going to give him 3 miracles that he can perform to answer a lot of these objections. Now, the people, he says, what if they don't listen to me? That's not the Egyptians. I want to make that plain. This is the Israelites. Because remember, they hadn't seen Moses. He'd been away for many years. Many of them didn't know who he was. And so he comes back and he's like, hey, Yahweh sent me. I am sent me. And I'm going to lead the people out of Egypt. Yeah, right. Sure, bozo. Get out of here. And that's why he was concerned. So some of his concerns are legitimate, but at the end of the day, sometimes you have to trust that God can do what he says he's going to do. I'm going to be with you. Now, let's take a look at the first of the miracles that he enabled Moses to do. And then the Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. And the Lord said, "Throw it on the ground." And so Moses threw it on the ground and it became a snake. And I like that. I like this next phrase. And he ran from it. How many of you, if I threw down a staff and it became a snake and it started going through the aisle, would get up and run today? You got any snake people in here? Some people are a little afraid of snakes. I recognize that. In our Easter cantata, we had planned, to have a live snake on the very first song when the Satan figure came out and tempted Adam and Eve with the apple. We had a guy reserved. He had a big python. He was yellow and cream colored. And he was going to have him around his neck, and you would have seen him as a live snake. And And I had some people catch wind of that, and they were like, "Man, if you have a live snake in that thing, I ain't coming." I said, "Well, we're not bringing it out into the audience. We're not wrapping around your neck. Don't worry about it. It's fine." But he backed out at the last minute, so we had to settle for no live snake. But Moses runs away from the snake when he drops the staff. And then the Lord said to him, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand. That took a little bit of trust, right? "This," said the Lord, "is so that they may believe the Lord, the God of their fathers," the God of Abraham. See that? The God of their fathers. Who's he speaking to? Not the Egyptians. Speaking to the Israelites. "So that the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you." Okay, this miraculous sign is to prove that Moses was speaking, with the Lord, that the Lord was with him, that the Lord was going to do what he said he was going to do through Moses. So again, the miraculous sign always authenticates a message. Okay, that's what the purpose of miracles are, to authenticate a message. We don't have miracles, constantly happening, in the world, because miracles don't create faith. Right? That's a difficulty, that we run into. Jesus did a lot of miracles and still people didn't believe. And then when they couldn't deny the miracles, they said, well, he did it with the power of Satan. Miracles don't overcome hard-heartedness. Okay, they are an evidence. And so, Moses is given the ability to have his message confirmed by the turning of this snake into a staff. Now, I'm going to bring up this old picture for you. Time is 1922. In Thebes, Egypt, there was an archaeologist by the name of Howard Carter and an Englishman by the name of Lord Carnarvon. And this is them, in the Valley of Kings, about to enter, an ancient tomb. and they're peering into the darkness. And the account goes that as they begin to open up and pull back, the opening, they said hot air, rushes out over them as they peer inside. And this is the quotation that you have here from one of these guys. He says, "As my eyes grew accustomed to the light, details of the room within emerged slowly from the mist. Strange animals, statues, and gold. Everywhere the glint of gold. For the moment in eternity, it must have seemed to the others standing by. I was struck dumb with amazement. And when Lord Carnarvon, unable to stand the suspense any longer, inquired anxiously, 'Can you see anything?' It was all I could do to get out the words. And the words that he spoke were these: 'Yes, I see wonderful things.'" That's what he said. "I see wonderful things." Well, what did he see? Inside, he saw, the tomb of Tutankhamun. And he saw the golden mask, and many of the treasures that were sent, buried, with the pharaoh to help him on his journey in the afterlife. The pharaoh had this headdress, mask that he was given, and what I want you to notice on the top of the headdress are two figures. The first figure, the one, I got to get this right, the one on your left, is a vulture, and what's the one on the right? It's a cobra. It's a snake. Now, what's interesting about this is that all of the pharaohs had, a snake on their headdress. And the snake represented the imperial power of Egypt. And that imperial power was trying to kill the Israelites, preventing them from getting any larger, because they were already a threat to the Egyptians. Threatening to kill Moses, that's why he had to flee, right? He was worried about them. And Moses was only allowed to come back to Egypt because the Pharaoh, had died. When a Pharaoh died, anybody accused of murder, all those charges went away. They were reset with the crowning of a new Pharaoh. And so the idea of the snake, being in Moses' hand, the staff, and turning into a snake and then turning back into a staff, was a representation that Moses was given power over Egypt, over Pharaoh himself, because that snake was the protector of Pharaoh, the protector of Egypt. And anyone that would come against him, it would spit or it would, strike with venom. So that's why it was on the headdress of all the pharaohs. So this had great symbolic meaning. And the Israelites understood this, and so what was in action here is that this was proof that Moses was going to be able to deliver the people, because God was giving him power over this snake. Now, obviously, we also know about those implications about the snake way back in the garden, the representation of Satan, and so Satan is behind the power of Egypt, and so obviously, God is going to be using Moses to be able to deliver, both from the seen power and the unseen power behind it. And the other interesting thing is that when we look through this whole story, when he picked up the staff, how did he pick it up? Picked it up by the tail. Now, if you know anything about handling snakes, you don't pick the snake up by the tail. Why? Because the thing can turn around in half its body and it can still bite you. You don't pick up a snake by its tail. You got to get it behind the head. Where its fangs can't sink into you, right? But this was the story. This was how docile and how fearless Moses was to be. Toward the Pharaoh, that he could pick up that snake by the tail and it become a staff again. And Pharaoh was going to be no different than that. Pharaoh was a defanged threat. That's what he's saying. Okay, that's the idea here, right? So that's the first thought, that we have here. Now, I want to talk for a second about a few of these. Well, actually, we're going to go to this. So at some point, at what time did you actually download this thing, man? I added a couple late slides, and you must have downloaded this pretty early. Interesting. So, so I want to look at the second miracle then. So the second miracle is the leprous right hand. And then the Lord said, "Put your hand inside your cloak." And so Moses put his hand inside the cloak. And when he took it out, the skin was leprous. It had become white as snow. Now put it back into your cloak, he said. And so Moses put his hand back into the cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored. Like the rest of his flesh. And so, you ask yourself, well, what is this one, all about? Was there, any, miracle or meaning in this second miracle? And obviously there was, right? So leprosy was a symbol of uncleanness. All throughout the Bible, you have this as something that is a terrible disease. It was incurable in the time, of the Bible, but now it's, very, very simple to be able to cure with modern medicine. But back then, you couldn't cure that, and it just continued to eat away at your extremities. It would strike your nose and your ears, and your fingers and your toes, and it would just begin to eat away and eat away and eat away. I think it's called Hansen's disease now or something like that. The modern name for it. But back then it was an incurable disease. So it became a symbol of uncleanness. If you had leprosy and you were within the Israelite community under the law, what did you have to do? You had to separate yourself. Okay? And so this was, what was being demonstrated here is that Israel had become unclean as they were under the power of Egypt. And with their corrupting influence, and with all of the limitations that that Israel had, and them falling away from worshiping their God, it was going to be necessary for the people of God, for Israel to be cleansed. And what was symbolic about the hand is the symbol of power, especially the right hand. And so this cleansing of Israel was going to take place by Moses. And he was going to bring the people to redemption, right? And that's going to lead you to your story of Passover and the blood of the Lamb and their consecration at Sinai, that God was going to restore, his people as a holy nation to be able to serve Yahweh, their God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so this, this authenticated Moses' power. So, God is going to be, with Moses. He's going to defeat, the Egyptians. And also, Moses' hand is going to be the one God is going to use to be able to cleanse, the people from their defilement, in Egypt. And God is going to do a mighty spiritual work in the nation. And so that's the meaning, in this second miracle. Well, then we come to miracle number 3. Miracle number 3. Then the Lord said, if they do not believe you or pay attention to the first sign, they may believe the second. But if they do not believe the 2 signs or listen to you, take some water from the Nile and pour it out on dry ground, and the water you take from the river will become blood on the ground. Right. So this is our third miracle. Now, what's the meaning in this miracle? The Nile River was the source of life for the Egyptians. Okay, everything revolved around the Nile River. Without the Nile River, there's no Egypt. Doesn't happen. Now I'm going to bring up this little picture for you here. This is the god, the Egyptian god Osiris. And you'll see Osiris, oftentimes, with green skin. In the tombs, when you go into the tombs in Egypt and you look at these things, they know what colors, things were. And so some of these inscriptions, they always present Osiris with green skin because Osiris, was the god of life, death, and rebirth. And so Osiris has green skin to be able to symbolize, that new growth, that happens and is heavily associated with the Nile River. And so you'll see this, this god presented this way. Now, the god Osiris was absolutely associated with the river, and with the turning, of the river to blood, it was turning life into death. And so the symbolism here, of this miracle was that Moses was given power to destroy the gods of Egypt and to punish the entire land with death. And that was exactly what was going to happen. Because remember that in the plagues, you see the entire Nile is turned to blood. You see the death of the firstborn that goes all through the entire land of Egypt. You see, people are killed from the fiery hail that rains down. This was exactly what Moses was going to bring. He was going to take their symbol of life, their God of life, death, and rebirth, and under Moses' authority, under Moses' power, as God was going to use him, I mean, he was going to turn life, into death for the Egyptians until such a time as they let the people go. So 3 miracles were given for a testimony to the Jewish people that they would have confidence that Moses, was the person that was going to be able to lead them, in this exodus from the Egyptians. So now we're going to go on to yet another objection. So here's the miracle. So now God gives them 3 miracles, right? So we've already had 3 objections. Now we're on to number 4, after he's given him 3 miraculous signs that he can perform at will. So you see how we're starting to stack up some issues here. Is it making sense to you? It's like, listen, brother, I understand that you're a little hesitant. But what else you want me to do for you here? Okay? This is how you're starting to feel in the story. And Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord, but I have never been eloquent, neither in the past, nor since you have spoken to your servant, for I am slow of speech and tongue." Now, the magicians of Egypt, by the way, the magicians of Egypt all had staffs. They all carried magic staffs, which you can see them in the inscriptions and in the paintings inside the caves and the tombs, performing magic, feats and arts, with the staffs. And so the magicians of Egypt were great orators. And they could talk, and they could tie you up in knots, and they could argue with you, and they could reason with you, and they could convince you, of just about anything. And so they were great talkers. So Moses says, "Listen, I've never been eloquent. I'm slow of speech and tongue." It's a really good translation there, of the Hebrew. But at the same time, something doesn't add up here. You see, Moses was trained in Pharaoh's court for 40 years. And he was trained in speech. Now, he may not have been as quick-witted as some of the magicians, or whatever else. But what we're noticing here is this pattern with Moses. He still lacks confidence in the Lord. See, all he can see is himself. He's not seeing, as we talked about on Sunday morning, that one man with God, no matter what you bring to the table, is an army. Right? That's Sunday morning message. See how these 2 messages are going to go together here? But he's just focused on himself and all his deficiencies. Listen, it's not about your deficiencies. It's about God's efficiencies. That's the lesson we have to learn. We've got to get that, through our head. Now, I hope it is going to come up. There's a good one here. F.B. Meyer. F.B. Meyer said this. British evangelist. "Cherish the lowliest thought you choose of yourself." Okay? It's good to be humble. That's what Meyer is saying. It's good to be humble. Cherish the lowliest thought you have of yourself. But what does he say? But unite it with the loftiest conception of God's all-sufficiency. See that? I can't, God can. And the gulf between those two. I can't, God can. Self-deprecation may lead to the marring of a useful life. In other words, if you sit around constantly saying, "I can't, there's no way God can use me to do this, there's no way, I don't have gifts, I don't have this," you could have been used to do a lot of things that God had called you to do. But you missed it because you kept saying, "I can't do anything." Because you were stuck on the lowliest thought of yourself. You never united that with the highest conception of God's all-sufficiency, that God can use you to do anything. That's within his will. We must think soberly of ourselves, not too lowly and not too extravagantly. And that's the path of wisdom. It's in the middle of those 2 ideas. Okay? And that's really good. That's an older quote, but boy, that's a winner, right? That one preaches. So the Lord then says, okay, well, once again, he's gracious. This is now, objection number 4. And so the Lord said to him, "Who gave human beings their mouths?" What's the answer to that question? He did. Who makes them deaf or mute? What's the answer to that? The Lord does, right? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? It's the Lord, right? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I love that. Now go. Stop bugging me. Now go, and I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say. Okay, the Lord says, don't worry about if you're eloquent or you're not eloquent. Don't worry about this or that. I'm going to teach you. I'm going with you. You're not going alone. Okay? I'm going to accomplish this. I have a couple other, quotations here I want to give you. Moses was reluctant to serve God because he was too self-conscious. See that? He was too self-conscious. He was too self-conscious and not God-conscious. See that? We need to balance the truth of John 15:5, without me you can do nothing, with that of Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through him who gives me the strength. Right? That's where we live the Christian life. We live the Christian life in the middle of those two things. Without me you can do nothing, and I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And then one more. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Does that make sense? You got that one? He doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. If God has a purpose for you, he has something he wants you to do, nothing can stop you from doing it except you. Except you. Now we come to the final straw. But Moses said, pardon your servant, Lord, but I don't want to do it. Send somebody else. I ain't going. Now, I've tried 4 times, Lord, to pawn this off on somebody else, and now I'm just going to have to come right out and say it, buddy. I don't want to do this, okay? I don't want to do it. We went through all of the trying to play nice with God, and now we come right down to brass tacks, right? I don't want to do this. Now, why didn't Moses want to do this? It seems like a very interesting problem, right? To reconcile this all out. I mean, he stood before the burning bush. He saw, heard the Lord's voice. The Lord spoke to him audibly. Saw the miracle of the bush burning but not being consumed. You figure maybe that would have woken you up a little bit, right? But, Moses, even though he had matured since those early days and when he murdered the Egyptian, he's still got a ways to go here, right? And he's giving these excuses, and I do believe that he felt, like that. As these excuses sort of added up, right? But now we've gotten to the point where the excuses have gotten out of control, and he's just simply being disobedient. That's it. See, if you make enough excuses, this is where you get to. This is where you get to. And then you know what? Then you know what your life amounts to? Nothing for the Lord. Nothing for the Lord. You want to get there. You don't want to get there. Now look at God's response. And now for the first time. And then the Lord's anger burned against Moses. You don't want that. You don't want that. See, God could be patient with Moses. Right? He could be patient with him through all of the questions and all the doubting and all of the excuses and the this and that and what ifs and the wherefores. But when Moses became willfully disobedient, that was too far for the Lord. The Lord said, And the anger of the Lord burns against Moses. And so now, there's going to be a little bit of a consequence here, right? And he says, what about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. By the way, how is he already on the way to meet him? The Lord already knew. See, the Lord's going before this whole situation, right? He's already on his way to meet you. He will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. And I will help. Notice again, I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth and as you were God to him. Okay, you see that? But take this staff in your hand so that you can perform signs with it. Now I want to fast forward, to chapter 7. And this is now chapter 7. And then the Lord said to Moses, "See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh. And your brother Aaron will be your what? Will be your prophet." Okay? That's the first time the word prophet appears in the Bible. Right there. "You are to say everything I command you, and your brother Aaron is to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go out of this country." What is a prophet? A prophet speaks for God. In this case, Aaron is going to speak for Moses. And what was Aaron to say? Whatever words you tell him, Moses, he will speak exactly. Not adding to it or not taking away from it. When the prophets, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, when they spoke, they said, "Thus saith the Lord." This is what the Lord told me, and I'm telling you exactly what he told me word for word, because he put his words in my mouth, in my heart, and I will communicate them to you. That's what a prophet does. A prophet speaks for God. And then you listen to all these so-called prophets on the interwebs. And they're predicting all kinds of things. "God told me, brother. God told me that this and that and the other thing," and none of it ever comes to pass. Did God put his words in his mouth? Nope. That's what we call a false prophet. And so the consequence for Moses was that Moses was not going to be able to be the one directly communicating. He lost that privilege, and it was going to go to Aaron. So let's look at some takeaways quick. We'll wrap this up. You see, everyone needs a purpose in life. That's our, Tom spoke about that a little bit earlier. Everybody needs a purpose. Our purpose is to serve the Lord and to glorify him. We pointed that out already, right? Now, when we surrender that purpose and we turn aside to some other purpose, seeking my own pleasure, seeking my own happiness, doing my own thing, my will, not his will, leads us into trouble, leads us into addiction, leads us into going far from God. We need to find what God's purpose is for each one of us. How does God want to use you? What is he calling you to do? Like Moses. It's not going to be deliver the people of Egypt, but what's it going to be? What is it? What is he calling you to do? Don't say nothing. Don't say I can't. Don't say, I'm not gifted. Don't say I can't speak. Don't say I'm blah there, I'm blah that. Don't give me the list of excuses. Because in the end, what do they boil down to? I won't. See, surrendering to that purpose, to God's purpose for your life, leads to joy and satisfaction in life. The exact things we seek apart from God. That's the great paradox. Fighting that purpose leads to God's anger and discipline. Two ways. The easy way, God's way, or the hard way. It's simple. It's not difficult. Pray that God will give each of us the strength to fulfill the purpose for which God saved us. Let's pray. Father, thank you again for this evening. Thank you again for your word, Lord. Thank you for this great passage. So many lessons we can learn from it, Lord. Just take your word and make it practical to each one of us tonight. We ask in your name. Amen.